Welcome to the 98% podcast, where we hear real stories from real people. And I am here with Brittany Powderly. And it's nice seeing you. Tell me a little bit about what do the people need to know about you, essentially, right now?
Sorry, it's fine. I grew up in Lake Ozark. I live in St. Charles now. I have a husband, 2 dogs, and 2 bonus kids, and they keep me pretty active.
Sweet. Okay. So how do you know me?
School. We met 3rd grade? 2nd grade? It's grade school.
Yeah, it was grade school. Yeah, when did you start going there?
From the beginning.
From the beginning? Okay. I was there in 1st grade, so maybe we just weren't in the same class then. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. Osage was home for the whole school education.
That's pretty sweet. Okay. So let's see. So how this works is I'm going to go through a set of questions, which I sent those to you in advance. And we're just going to go through and just share your story. And we would love to see how the audience connects with you and your story. So first, what was growing up like for you?
Good. I mean, I don't have any bad memories. I loved living at the lake, being able to swim, and I have most of my main core memories are from spending time with family and friends down at the lake, skiing and tubing and swimming and just enjoying the life that you get to live when you're there.
It's pretty sweet. So it's funny because I lived right by the lake and I didn't go to the lake very much at all. I think I was there like a handful of times.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like the one thing that I absolutely hate about living anywhere else but the lake, because I have memories. Even after I graduated college, I went back for a year, and my brother would call me and be like, "Hey, we're going out skiing. Like, meet us at Dad's house." So it's really hard for me here when it's a nice day out to not be able to be like, "Let's go! Like, let's go outside and swim and do what I grew up doing." But yeah, no, I mean, I think you pretty much lived in the water.
Yeah, that's awesome. Even though the water's pretty dirty, but it is what it is.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite memory like in detail of the lake then? So since you said you did quite a few things on it, what's something that really stuck out to you that you just really, really enjoyed? Like one of those moments.
I love water skiing. It's just where we're at. My whole family skied. My older brothers did. I think they did small trick skiing when they were in high school, and my brother, my nephews and niece have skied. My sister's the only one that she learned pretty much like stopped the second she learned. But yeah, I mean, anything on that boat, like I have really good memories with it. Actually, we just taught my stepson. My brother just helped me teach him how to ski, which was kind of cool, like we've been doing this so long, me and Paul, for years, and now we're getting to bring Reed into it too. So it was really cool to do that. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I didn't know you did trick skiing. So like
no, my brothers did.
Oh.
I barefoot skied, and then yeah, and I actually was like so happy, and I did it when I was really young. I think I was in 4th grade at the oldest. And then the way you have to do it though, like if you put one toe down, it's like a rock and you trip over it and go like face first into the water. And I just remember this one time I was working with my mom's best friends who helped teach me how to do barefoot skiing, and I like put my toe down and like went face first in the water. My eyelids were like peeled back, all the water came like flooding at me, and they still tease me about it today because I came up just like crying. I was blind from all the water being like just like flooded into my eyes. And that was the last time I barefoot skied. I never did it again after that. I was done.
That's sad. That sounds traumatizing.
It was definitely traumatizing. Now when I look back at it, I'm like, I wish I would have just like done it again. But I think I was young enough that at the time it was like, if this is what happens every time I fall, like I'm good with just sticking with, like the more basic, what I know.
That's one thing I never tried. I never tried water skiing. I did tubing, and tubing was awesome, especially if you rode with someone who went really, really fast and didn't really care about. Yeah, and then they tried to throw you off fast. That was like a thing we had. I didn't go tubing much, but the times we went, I just remember that we had a big tube one time we went. We'd have 2 people on at a time, and it was like competitive, like who can stay on the longest. And yeah, it was good. I did pretty good. But But yeah, I mean, I ate it a few times too. And it was pretty awesome. So I don't know why. I just thought it was fun.
Yeah, no, I never enjoyed being thrown off the tube, but like Matt and Tony, like they used to come over and my mom would like purposely try and like fling them as hard as they could off the tube, and they'd be so proud whenever like she'd do it for 5 minutes and they'd still be standing on the tube, you know? But it's like, no, that's not my cup of tea to be like chucked halfway across the lake because of how fast we're going on a tube.
Is that like a boys versus girls thing, you think?
Oh, maybe because, like I said, we just taught like Reed to ski, and he's been tubing for years. But my stepdaughter she wasn't really interested in it because she was worried about falling off, and she did it for the first time this summer. And but like when we go to do it, she makes sure I understand, like, Brittany, no crazy driving, like just straight driving, no flinging people off. Because like Reed, when he's done it by himself, he just like flies, like. The tube is in the air, and we're wondering if he's still on it, if he's gonna, like what's going on. So maybe it is. I don't know. There's never something that interested me to be bruised and bloodied from riding an inner tube.
Yeah, guys are weird. I loved it. Any type of physical things. I remember being a kid, like my favorite thing to do would be just to like find random kids that I didn't know. Like if we went to like Minor Mike's or some random place and just like, hey, do you want to wrestle? Sure. And we would become best friends like on the spot.
Sorry.
It's all good.
There's dogs outside. They were like, hey, we're in here. Just know that we're here.
Okay. And one thing too that I remember, so you also did dance a lot, if I recall, growing up. Is that fair?
Yeah, I actually went to college to be a dancer. And actually we knew someone that used to be a rockette, and I was on that track. I was ready to go to college, get my dance degree, go to New York, audition to be a rockette. Like I was ready for it. After college, I didn't end up getting a dance degree, but I did teach dance for a while, and I still try to get as involved with it as I can. But yeah, no, dance was 24/7 growing up.
Yeah, that's wild. I remember that. Did you do a specific dance, or did you do lots of different types?
I did different types. My sister and I actually ended up excelling in like a musical theater kind of category. We actually had at one point taken a duet that we did together. We won this special award called Teacher's Choice Award at one of our competitions, and we ended up going to nationals with this duet, and we competed the other dances that were in this category. There was like 50 to 100 people in every dance, and Anna Marie and I were the only one that was just a duet. But we like to joke because it was that song, anything you can do, I can do better. And so it was like we were like fighting on the stage. It was like everyone was like, oh, it looks so good. And it's like, well, great, because like we're getting to like, fight a little bit and bicker with each other on the stage while doing what we love. So that was probably my favorite. I think that's probably one of my favorite dances I've ever done. And yeah, I was doing it with my sister. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember, who performed that? Didn't someone perform that in like third grade or something? I know that's a weird thing. For some weird reason, I remember like, I guess it was like the talent show when we were in elementary, and there were two girls that did that. And I mean, I don't think it was you, of course, because you don't ever seem to remember, but I don't remember who it was, but I remember they did the same thing, that same song. That's how I knew it, because it got ingrained in my brain.
Who did it? I don't remember the third grade one. I remember like one year Danica did Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I remember that one. But I don't remember that song. But yeah, probably. I mean, shoot, honestly, the way our school was, it's very different than when you're in the city, which I'm learning now. Like we start together and you finish together. Like all 12 years, all 13 years, like you're there, and that's not what other places really ever experience, Like even here, my stepson's going into 6th grade, and he's already talking about going to high schools, and you get to choose where you want to go. And I guarantee you where he wants to go, 85% of his class is not going there. So it's definitely different, but yeah.
That's interesting. How do you think that affects people? Do you think that affects people on a certain level of like going through, school with the same kids your whole entire life essentially versus going from school to school?
I think I liked it better that way. like my husband talks about, he went to a Catholic school for grade school. So kindergarten through 8th grade, he was at this one school. And then all of his classmates went to other Catholic schools or like other schools essentially, but most of them went to some sort of Catholic high school. Sorry, Penelope, stop. And he went to a public school, and he went with 2 other people from his class, and he remembers like one of the person, maybe both of them, they actually left after like the first couple of days because they were so overwhelmed by not knowing anyone in the high school that they couldn't do it. So they, switched to a different school where they knew there was more people there. I think that would have stressed me out more. Like going into high school is enough, like when you're already being greeted by all these, to me, like it was overwhelming for me to go meet, be around surrounded like all the upperclassmen and stuff, being like the new person in the school. So I liked starting from the beginning and knowing who I was going to be with from from the very beginning, knowing I was going to have like that core group of friends or whatever to support you when you're stressed out about it. But yeah, I think it's very interesting how it works in the cities versus how it worked at Osage.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I feel like there's pros and cons in that, right? I think the benefit of obviously, I'd say there's a relationship benefit of knowing someone for a long period of time and kind of continuing to grow that relationship, through the good times, the tough times. And I guess on the flip side, I guess you could see meeting people. That seems also like a good skill too, of being able to like meet people, but then also meet new people. So I don't know. It's interesting. I've never thought about that before. So that's a really cool concept that I would love to just ponder for a while.
Yeah. And like when I first met my husband, his niece was, well, a little after I met him, his niece was looking at high schools. And so they were talking about like, oh, she's going to drive, 25 minutes out of the way to go to the school that she's going to. And it's like, whoa, like we didn't have that option. It was like, this is the high school and you go here. Like problem solved.
Yeah. They don't have that many schools.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, that was pretty normal. I think I was at least 20 minutes or so away from school, and that was pretty normal.
Yeah. And like the drive isn't the issue so much as it was just like she was just like, yeah, like I'm looking at high schools and I'm deciding which one I want to go to. It felt like she was looking at colleges. It's like, it's
high school.
Like I didn't have the option, like this is where you went.
Yeah.
It's true. It's different.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So next question. So how about this? So this one, I love this question. So what's the biggest struggle that you've made it through?
Mine would be my health. I was really healthy all through high school, and then freshman year of college hit, and it just went downhill. I don't even know. I thought I had the flu, and at the time I was a dance major, and so you did you'd had the main classes of math and English, and you went to those general ed classes, but a huge chunk of my time was spent dancing, and then you had rehearsals for performances that they did every so many months, and I really liked it. I loved it. I didn't know what to expect going into it, but considering how much dance had been a part of my life, like I was all for it. And like end of October, I got the flu, or we thought it was the flu. And I was out for 2 weeks and I missed so much class, and they were trying to make it where I was able to keep up with my classmates because you graduate in 3 years instead of 4 in the dance program. And when I started trying to get my classes back and get those credits, I started having this pain where I would physically feel like I was paralyzed. I wasn't, but I could not move. The stomach pain was unbelievable. Like, can't even describe how painful it was. And I saw a GI doctor, and they were like, hey, sometimes you get dealt a bad hand. Like, sometimes you just have pains and you have to learn to deal with it. And I was like, this sucks, but okay. So I kept trying to push myself, and I finished the semester. And then when I went to start the second semester of classes, I had like a meeting with my advising team, and my academic advisor was the head of the department, and he was like, look at you, like you're not even holding yourself appropriately for a dancer. I was like slumped over because my stomach was hurting, and like it just would come in these like huge waves. He was like, I just don't think you're going to make it. Like, maybe you need to look at, other classes, like something needs to be going on. So I ended up enrolling in some marketing classes, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was amazing. And by the end of the year, I was too sick. I couldn't handle the amount of physical exercise was needed to be a dance major. And so I was done. And I had pain off and on my entire college career. And the summer going into my senior year, the pain started getting really bad. And I started seeing all these specialists, and they all kept saying everything looks normal. Like, maybe it's just like growing pains. Like, maybe it's something's happening, but we can't tell you what it is. And, just try and push through it. And the pain kept getting horrible. My mom's best friend read a newspaper article about a girl who was having the same stomach pain I was having and was diagnosed with a rare medical condition. My mom then took that newspaper article to a doctor I'd been seeing since I was in like 5th grade. He believed us, and he was able to get us appointments with specialists in Chicago. My sister at the time was having her own health issues and had seen a doctor at the hospital down here in St. Louis. And they mentioned what they thought I might have. And the doctor was like, why are you going to Chicago? You should just see a doctor here. And my mom was like, well, we couldn't get an appointment here. They said she had to basically be in kidney failure for them to see her. And my sister's doctor was like, no, I'm going to get you an appointment. So we had one within a week. It was amazing. And he saw me and instantly was like, oh yeah, like, you have this condition. We need to do surgery right away. And my mom was like, how soon is right away? And he was like, tomorrow. I'm like, oh, great. Like, naturally the nerd in me freaked out a little bit. And I was like, well, I have midterms. Like, can I go back? Can I go back to Columbia and finish my midterms and then come back and, get started? And he was like, if you have to, like, sure, but he wasn't really pleased with it. But it turned out I was having stomach pain, but my condition was actually vascular related. So it's called median arcuate ligament syndrome. And layman's terms is everyone has a ligament called the median arcuate ligament, and it supports your diaphragm. And it's sort of like your appendix, like you don't actually need it, but it's there. And what happens is sometimes there's 3 arteries that branch off your main artery, and they go to your GI tract. So whenever you eat food, blood rushes through these arteries to your GI tract to help break down the food. My one of the arteries was too high up on this main artery. And so when I went through a growth spurt, the ligament ended up essentially like sitting on top of this artery and compressing it. So I wasn't getting the blood flow I needed. So every time I ate, I was having this like horrible, severe stomach pain. And at some point, I had gone through it long enough that the nerves were damaged, where my body was just saying, hey, you're in pain all the time, because it had been going on for so long. By the time they did surgery on me, it was 98% occluded. So I only had 2% blood flow. It took 4 years. It took 4 years to figure it out. And it was all of a newspaper article, which is unbelievable and amazing. And the problem is once it was fixed, they thought they might have to do bypass surgery. It was an over 3-hour surgery. And once they removed the ligament, my artery popped back up and it looked like it had full patency. And so they were like, hey, like, we don't have to be as invasive as we thought we were going to have to be by placing a stent and like, doing different things. And so they were like, we're just going to see what happens. Well, I dealt with it for so long that I ended up having massive amounts of problems afterwards. And you don't realize it until it starts happening. But that was my trauma. That was a trauma that my body went through. I developed nerve damage from it. I developed postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome from it. I know your sister has it. I've talked to her about it when she first was diagnosed with hers. But it's something where, like, when you get POTS, it's you develop this condition based off a trauma your body perceives it's experienced. So for me, that was going through this massive thing with my stomach and the vascular elements that affect it. There are people, when they're pregnant, their body perceives their pregnancy or their labor and delivery as a trauma, and it puts your brain in this like loop of a constant fight or flight, and you end up developing postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, also called POTS. So when I was diagnosed, it was back in 2010, and it was not heard of. Like, it just wasn't. People don't believe in it. People still don't believe in it, but it's more well known now because of COVID, because a lot of people, their body experienced trauma from dealing with, COVID symptoms, and they've been diagnosed with POTS. So, so I started dealing with POTS, and I, felt like I somewhat had it under control. We had to drive to Nashville at the time. There was no other doctor in the area that we knew about that was seeing this, for this condition. And so we did it. And, the problem is that with POTS, it's a autonomic nervous system disorder. So your autonomic nervous system is something where you don't normally think about things that your body would do. So controlling blood pressure, that's not something on a daily basis. You're like, okay, my blood pressure needs to be at this number and it doesn't need to go higher. Like your body just knows, okay, blood pressure needs to be good. Your heart rate needs to be, at a healthy level. You need to be breathing in and out. Those are things like my body it's not able to do on its own anymore. So because of having this condition. So, I would be standing in a grocery store line and then like pass out. Well, it's because I was standing still too long, and my blood was pooling in my extremities, and I wasn't getting blood back to my heart and my brain. And at some point my heart would start beating faster trying to get the blood back. It wouldn't be happening. And my brain would be like, hey, you're not getting what you need. Like, we're going to just pass out. And the second I would pass out, it would be like maybe 30 seconds, and I'd wake up, I'd be totally fine. I would know what happened, but because my body was then like flat, my blood was circulating better. It wasn't pooling in, from standing up or sitting or whatever. So I dealt with that for a couple of years. I actually felt like I'd finally figured it out, and I started getting sicker. And apparently it's really common with POTS people. And in the end, I have now 15 comorbidities that are associated that they believe has stemmed from POTS, from these conditions that come up when you have POTS. But I think, and I dealt with it for years, and I felt like I did pretty good. I mean, I had trouble keeping steady work. I did mostly freelance contract work. I have a degree in marketing, public relations, and advertising. So it kind of works for me where I could just let marketing agencies know that I was available, and then if they had work, they would send it to me. But I wasn't able to go in and spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, working in an office. It was too much for me. I hit my low point. My stomach stopped working completely, and I was having like massive pain. I remember I started gaining weight, and people kept saying like, I don't know why you're gaining weight. Like, I've been the same weight since I was freshman in high school. And like, they're like, I don't know what's going on, but like something's wrong. And my GI doctor at the time, who I absolutely love, he was like, maybe like the median arcuate ligament syndrome, maybe the scar tissue is making like, it's sort of like causing a reoccurrence. And so he went through all my old patient notes, and he was looking for things and pushing on my stomach. He was making me physically get sick. And he was like, I think we need to do like a scope, and we need to see what's going on. He was like, so like, don't eat tomorrow and come in, from like noon or whatever on, and come in and we're going to do an upper endoscopy. And so I went in the next day, or 2 days later. And I remember waking up to him telling my mom that my stomach was completely paralyzed. And even though I hadn't eaten any solid food in almost a week, my stomach was completely full of undigested food. It wasn't working. So, which, I don't think people realize, like, when you have chronic health issues, and maybe you've experienced it with your sister, there are times when people that want to know how you're feeling, and you genuinely like give them that truthful, honest answer. Like, if my mom asks me how I'm doing, I tell her like, hey, I feel like crap, like I'm feeling horrible. But if I'm talking to someone who knows I have health issues, but like they kind of stay away from that topic, it's like they don't want to know how you're truly feeling. They want to hear you say like, oh, hey, I'm good. Like, things have been great, even though that's not necessarily where you've been, And so I had people around me at the time that kind of made me feel like that. And so we would, like, I remember like my mom and I going out to Mother's Day dinner with my sister and her husband. And the whole time I was like trying to eat, and I couldn't eat, and then coming home and like getting so sick that I was like vomiting blood because we couldn't figure out what was wrong, but I was in so much pain. And I felt like, oh, I'm complaining all the time. I can't tell someone I'm in so much pain. And I dealt with that for about a month before I finally was able to get myself to go to my GI doctor. And when he said your stomach's paralyzed, I was immediately sent to the hospital and scheduled for emergency surgery the next day. So they placed a feeding tube, and it was supposed to be a couple weeks. And we know how that goes. So it didn't happen in a couple weeks. I essentially I had a jejunostomy. So essentially they cut a hole in my abdomen, and they place a tube into my small intestine. So it completely bypasses my stomach. And the goal of it was to hopefully give my stomach like a break and see what was going on with it, and like see if it would calm down. And the GI doctor was like, hey, like I think 2, maybe 3 weeks, like it's not gonna be permanent. Like this is, your body is reacting to a flare that you're in. You need nutrition. Let's calm it down, and then you'll be good to go. And I was like, okay, like I was not okay with it, but what can you do when you're not getting nutrition? Like they're worried about what's going to happen next. So that night, my mom went and got me a butterscotch milkshake, and I had my last meal before I went in for surgery. So once I had the surgery, because of all my conditions, and because some of them are not as well known as others, and because doctors don't believe in them all, my doctor ended up going on vacation for a week. And of course, he had someone stepping in from his office trying to help out. And he did believe in the conditions, but he wasn't advocating for me quite like my normal doctor would. And so 3 days, I was told only sips of water by mouth, and I could have like popsicles. But otherwise, no solid foods, nothing by mouth ever. And everything went through my IV in the beginning. And then 3 days in, the hospitalist came in and was like, hey, like, we're going to start giving you pill forms. Like, you can't, I kept saying, like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I'm in so much pain. He kept asking for more pain meds. And they're like, there's no way you're still in pain. Like, there's just no way. It's like, okay. So they started giving me pills. And I took the pills. And then 4 days later, my doctor came back, and he was like, what's going on? I was like, I can't explain to you the amount of pain I'm still in. Like, this was supposed to make it better, and the pain is still there. And it's not like it's a new pain, it's the same pain. And they did a CT scan and found that all those pain pills that they'd been giving me and the different medications that I was supposed to be taking in my mouth, since my stomach wasn't working, they're all sitting in my stomach. So they had to be super careful, because now I, could potentially overdose on all these medications that are sitting in my stomach. And I stayed in the hospital another week. And that was when I was not allowed water, ice chips, nothing was allowed by mouth. I went 7 months with nothing to eat or drink by mouth. Everything went through a feeding tube in my stomach. And because it's your small intestine, while it's part of your GI tract, it is not something that can hold as much like food and liquid like your stomach can. It doesn't necessarily stretch like your stomach can. So people that have a tube that goes to their stomach, they can do like massive feedings for like an hour and then disconnect from the machine, and then they can walk around. And besides having like a tube in their stomach, you would never know that something was going on. For me, because they went through my small intestine, I was connected 24/7. I had to get like a backpack that, carried my machine, and it, you fed the nutrition through it. And then, we ran into problems where, because of my other health conditions, I have weird allergies and things that you have to be very conscientious of. And of course, the tube feeding formulas that they give adults, that they give most people, like they had foods in there that I couldn't have without setting myself into another flare. So I was put on, it's like baby food formula. So I was getting very little calories a day, barely any to sustain. And so when I got out, I pretty much put myself in bed and stayed there. I think it was my lowest point in my life. I got to a point where, with my health stuff, like I wasn't happy with the things that were going on with me, but I had kind of learned to cope, like even after my first surgery, like for a while, I have an incision that's about 7.5 inches long, and it goes down my entire stomach. And for a while, like I used to have trouble changing because it was just so depressing, like to see this massive span. But at some point, like I figured it out, like, hey, I'm strong. Like this is showing that I'm strong. Like I've survived this. But when that feeding tube came, I was done. I didn't understand why I kept being given these issues, like I went through one rare weird thing and I've been dealing with chronic health issues since. I didn't need another weird thing happening to me or another medical, issue coming up. So that was a struggle. I struggled almost the whole time I was on my feeding tube, actually. It was hard. I wasn't okay with it. I had trouble getting out of bed. All my meds had to be crushed, mixed with water, and injected through my feeding tube. And it took me hours to do it. And then because it was being done that way, I was taking them that way, sometimes the side effects were like a lot worse for me. And so I would spend 2 hours doing it in the morning, and then 2 hours doing it again midday, and then 2 hours in the evening, and then I'd spend about 2 to 3 hours in the evening, like at bedtime, doing this, injecting this medicine into me. And it was painful, and I was just at my low point. I just was there. I was fine, wasn't going to hurt myself, but I was fine if something happened, if I just was done. It was hard. It was hard to sit there. I had just turned 30, and it was just sad. Like, this isn't where my life was supposed to be. I was supposed to be, having a family and getting to go out and enjoy myself and eating food by mouth, like I wasn't supposed to be doing what I'm doing. But eventually, I finished right before I had the feeding tube. I had finished my master's, and my mom, I was supposed to graduate that summer, and I had my feeding tube, and I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not going to walk across stage with a feeding tube in my stomach. I'm not going to do this stuff. My mom was like, you need to get out. You need to do this. So we flew to Arizona, and I graduated with my master's, and I had a feeding tube in my stomach while I did it. I disconnected for that short time, so I didn't have to have like a backpack on while I was walking across the stage. But I did it, and then halfway through the ceremony, my feeding tube started leaking, and I had to get up in the middle of the ceremony and leave to go, fix the problem. And it's funny because now my mom's like, you would never know. Like, we have pictures of you at that master's program. You would never know. The pictures that we took 5 minutes earlier, you were crying because, you had stomach contents like leaking out of your feeding tube while you were trying to celebrate something good that actually happened in your life. So, but I dealt with that for a long time. And actually, I met my husband while I was on my feeding tube. And it kind of surprised me. I didn't think someone would want to date someone with feeding tube. It's kind of a different lifestyle, But yeah, that was probably my lowest point. And I know there's a reason I've been given it. I know there's a reason that I went through what I went through. But, when you're in those moments, you don't want to think about the reasoning later that's supposed to help you. You want to know why it's happening to you then. You want to know, yeah, it's hard. And it's hard when you have chronic health issues. A lot of people get diagnosed with like PTSD. But it's not PTSD because you experienced something like, going to war or whatever. It's PTSD because you are trapped in a physically ill body and you're not getting better and you can't get away from it. And you have moments where it's like, I don't feel like going to the doctor. Like, I'm having a little bit of pain and I probably should go. But you know what? Like, we're going to wait and see what happens. And that's pretty much what I did. And I'm not saying my outcome would have been any different because I have a feeling I would have been in the same spot. But you kind of get in this mentality of like, well, is the pain bad enough where we need to go to the hospital or we need to call a doctor? Or can you push through and pretend like it's not happening? Like, you don't want to deal with something else again, So, but yeah, definitely has been my biggest struggle. And I still deal with it today. I was able to get off my feeding tube 9 months after I was put on it. But it was a fight, and it's a fight still. Every day I have to be very conscientious of what I'm eating and what I'm doing and the exercise I'm doing, and make sure that as much as like I'm taking care of the people around me, I can't put myself on the back burner unless I want to end up back in that spot. And sometimes it's hard to do that.
That's such a wild story. Like, I had no idea. So I do have a lot of questions. So like, first, I met your husband. He's like the coolest guy, by the way. He's a total sweet dude. I don't know if he's there hearing anything, but
yeah,
is he? He's awesome. So I think I remember him telling a story, and I just thought it was so cool that, like, I guess when you were dating or something, like, you wanted water and he didn't know what type of water you wanted, so he got like a ton of waters so you could choose which one you wanted. I remember hearing that and be like, dude, that's so cool. That guy's awesome. So
yeah, that was when I was I was first on my feeding tube, and
Yeah.
he was like, well, what can we do? Like, because we met online. And I was like, well, not a whole lot, because you don't think about it, but especially in America, everything centers around food. Like, someone's sick, oh, hey, I'll bring you food. Someone died, let me bring you food. Oh, you have a graduation? Let's have a big barbecue.
Yeah.
So it's like, that was a struggle for me when I got put on the feeding tube, especially with like friends. They'd be like, hey, I'm going to send you a care package. What kind of cookies do you want? Well, I want all of them, but I can't have any, like it was kind of a struggle. And Brett, he gave me about 6 different water choices, because I had our first date, I had just started being able to take sips of water by mouth. So he gave me an array of options for choices, since he couldn't provide anything else for me.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I love that. So a few other questions I have too is like, so one, when you talked about your first doctor, like to say like you're just dealt with, like these are just cards that you're dealt with. Like I feel like that's like the most insensitive thing and less helpful. Like that's so unhelpful.
It
And
is.
it's
And in all honesty, he apologized at the end.
good.
In the end of the whole course of the matter, because I saw him my freshman year and I did not go back. And then my senior year, when we needed some scans to be like able to definitively diagnose this condition, we went back to him and like said like, hey, this is what they're thinking. Can you do, these tests for it? And when it came back, he was like, I'm sorry, like I was doing, what was going on. And but it's like, I don't think, and I think it's changed a little bit since then. Because I mean, this was 24 years ago now. But I do think that sometimes doctors are looked at as if they have the answer for absolutely everything. And I think sometimes they become desensitized to when someone's telling you, like, hey, I know you're seeing nothing, but I'm telling you something, something is going
Yeah.
on. Like maybe we're not aware of what we should be looking for, but like something is happening.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I mean, shoot, I've been doing this for way too long now. And I've learned you have to be your own advocate. You have to, not to say that you have to fight every doctor you see, but if you are working with a doctor and you don't feel like they are believing you, or they're not taking you seriously, or you're not meshing well communication style wise, it's okay to find someone else. Like, does it suck that you have to start all over finding that doctor? Yes. But you don't want a doctor that doesn't believe you, that you're in constant pain. I'm lucky that, well, actually, part of the reason I moved to St. Louis is because I was finding doctors here in the area, that it was beneficial for me to be closer. But I'm lucky in the sense that I finally have found like a good team of doctors that I can, like, especially with my feeding tube, like we had no idea what was going on, why my stomach wasn't restarting, like why things weren't working. And I was lucky to be able to do my own research and then send an email and say like, hey, I found this. What do you think? Like, do you think it's worth trying? Do you think, if I did it this way, could we see what's happening? Could we relook and see if my stomach is, jump started? So I do think that's something that people don't realize. Like, I think doctors sometimes have so much pressure put on them that at some point, if they don't have that black and white answer, then they're like, I can't, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, I'm looking at my textbook and my textbook says, if this looks like this, then you're good. And it's like, people aren't like that anymore. Every single person is different. And actually, I remember telling your sister this when we first started discussing after she got diagnosed with POTS. My treatment will never be the same as her treatment, and we have the exact same condition. There is never a black and white, hey, you have POTS, here, this is what you do. There's never a direct answer like that. Everyone has other things going on, and the meds affect them differently, and you have to be able to stand up for yourself. And it sucks that the doctors are put in a position where they almost come out as the bad guy sometimes. But I think that's where the doctors need to learn a little bit more of, for lack of a better word, empathy and compassion. They need to be able to say, like, hey, you know what? I may not know everything right now, but I'm going to look into it. Like, I may not be the smartest person right here. Like, I may have more knowledge, but maybe there is something to this. And I think that's important for, honestly, anyone to remember when they're talking to any person, whether you're a doctor, a patient, or even just a friend. Like, that person knows themselves better than anyone. Just is what it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So when I think about that stuff, like, I think about the hospital right now, and I'm sure they're just as short staffed as anybody else, right? So when I think about that, it's like, well, I could see why maybe they're just treating people as like, hey, I just got to get this done because I got a lot of people like a lot of patients I have to help or whatever. But I think to your point, I think those are two really good tidbits, and I want to reemphasize that. Is I think yes, I think to be your own advocate, I think is extremely important, and I think doctors have to have empathy. I think those are the two main things right there. Because I had Chris on the episode on the podcast a few episodes ago, and his story was like that too. Like he's there's been so many instances where if he wouldn't have like told the doctors or nurses like this is what you need to do, he would be dead because they were going to do something that was not good for him. And it's like, it's crazy to think that like if he didn't stand up and say something to be his own advocate, he might not even be alive right now, which is crazy to think about. So
well, honestly, that happens to me with my feeding tube. When you get a feeding tube, you see a dietitian, and the dietitian came in the hospital and to the hospital room, and she was like, hey, like, we're going to give you this food, well, they call it food, and it's beneficial for someone with a feeding tube to say it's food. Don't say it's formula or, feeding tube nutrition, because that is their food. So call it food. Don't lessen the situation when it's already hard enough to know that you're not eating solid food. But she came in and was like, hey, we're going to give you this food. And I was like, I can't have it. I'm allergic. And she's like, well, when you're looking at an ingredient list, like the lower on the ingredient list, the less amount of that food that's in there. And I was like, okay, but I still can't have it. Like, I'm still allergic. And she was like, well, like, we're bypassing things. Like, I'm reading the textbooks, and the textbooks are saying like, when I look up this condition that you have with this thing, like, they're saying you need to have this. And my mom and I both, like, we argued for a while, and they actually had like the head dietitian, like the supervisor, come in and speak to us. And it was like, no matter what I said, they insisted. So we tried it, and instantly I was doubled over in pain, like having all these problems, and it's one of those things that like, I finally, it was an instance of me being so exhausted that I just gave in, and I shouldn't have, because it set me back, but it was like, I'm laying in a hospital bed and I've been fighting with you for several hours, and my mom's been fighting with you. And at some point it was like, maybe I need to show you I'm going to have a huge problem, and this is where we're at. But when she came back, she was like, well, I don't know what to do, because this is what the textbook says. Well, that's great, but like, the textbook is not like, you're not listening to the patient, you're listening to a book who's never met me. And so it took my doctor working with us to do it. But I mean, honestly, after my feeding tube, I went back to school to become a dietitian, because there's so many stories that are like that, where the dietitian's like, well, the book says you should be able to do this. It's like, it doesn't mean anything. It does not mean anything at all. You don't, every single person is different. So, so it is interesting how, as much as like, I think you can tell someone like, hey, everyone's individual, they're all unique. But when you get in that hospital setting, it's almost like, well, we've done this with other patients and we know this works. But, it's like Chris, like, if he hadn't fought, what would happen? Like, you can't, at some point you gotta say like, hey, maybe let's just try it your way once, and then we'll try my way, But yeah, so I watched his podcast. I related in some ways to things he was saying, and it's sad that there's more than one story that's out there like that,
Absolutely. So one thing too is I wanted to go back to something you mentioned. So you talked about POTS and stuff, and it's interesting to think about. So since it's not like a psychological thing, and it is, you mentioned autonomic nervous system. So then how do you treat something like that? Like if it's literally like subconscious, like you can't control it, you can't think differently. How do you help with that?
So part of it's like reconditioning. I know the first thing that most people suggest is diet and exercise. And there's actually like a protocol that they recommend. And it's essentially like to get your body used to like being upright and walking and get your heart rate. Your heart rate has to stay in a targeted area for what's going on with you. And then you follow this diet. Usually there are people that have gotten their POTS under control. It's not something that's not plausible.
Yep.
It's just that you have to be willing to dedicate the time.
Yep.
And there are some people, like I'm in a local support group, I'm in a nationwide support group, but there are some people in like our local support group who they'll be upset and they'll be complaining like, oh, like I feel horrible and, whatever. And someone will say like, hey, have you been following the exercise protocol? Like, have you been following the diet? And they're like, well, no, because I like eating, like one of the things is like gluten-free and then like dairy-free. And they're like, well, have you been following the diet? And he's like, well, no, because I like my sandwiches. Well, great. But, to a point, like to get better, you have to follow this protocol. And there is bread that you can have that has, no gluten in it. But typically it's like they let you try this, diet and exercise protocol. And then if you're not getting better, there are medications like beta blockers and different things that they can help. Where some patients, if they have trouble drinking a lot of water, then they'll get like supplemental IV fluid. So they'll go in once a week or once every 2 weeks and they'll get a large amount of fluids, through an IV to help them keep their fluid intake up, because most POTS people need more fluid to keep the blood from pooling in the legs like they do. The more fluid, the more likely it is to help with that. So, but yeah, so I mean, mine is diet and exercise, and I have a very, very, very low dose beta blocker. But there are other people who have to be on meds that, help them retain water and help them, do things like that to help them get there. But my biggest thing that's helped me is exercise. I guess diet to a degree, but I already was eating similar to what was going on. So it didn't change too much for me. But yeah, I mean, sometimes when you're dealing with that stuff, it's hard, but you have to be able to commit to it to get better as well. I mean,
Yep.
We talk about like the doctors need to be empathetic and they need to be compassionate and they need to understand that like you're your own individual person. But at the same time, the patient has to remember that about a doctor. And the thing is sometimes I think people look at it like, well, he wouldn't give me any medicine. Well, he's trying to keep you off the medicine. Like, like I understand you think the medicine is like that cure all, take the pill and you're just better. But the medicine still has side effects. He's trying to, they're trying to prevent that from happening. So it's, it's kind of like a double-edged coin there, where you have to kind of like look at it and be like, okay, like as much as I need to fight for myself, I also need to at least attempt what's being suggested. But I mean, it took me years to find the right medication combination to work for me, because I was having some of the side effects were just too much for me. I would take them and my ankles would swell or, things would happen. And it was like, I can't keep taking this, it's detrimental to what I'm trying to do. But like I said, the exercise, it's pretty beneficial. And I noticed with eating too, they tell you to increase your salt intake because it helps you retain fluid more. So like everything is very salty in our household.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I was curious if you were going to say that. Like, I think, because honestly, I feel like the cure to almost everything is to exercise. It's weird, right? Like to do some type of exercise. Like, and I don't know if it's moving the body, getting stuff circulating, maybe the emotional and mental health that comes with it. I'm not too sure, but I think it's really interesting. So like, but to that point too, I think it's so interesting how some people won't change their lifestyle. And it's like a pet peeve of mine is like, it's so crazy that like you have a health condition and if you could do this consistently, you could be better. And people still refuse to do it because they're like, no, I want to eat my sandwiches or whatever. And you're like, no, like, come on. Like, you're just like, I don't know. It's so interesting. And then another point you mentioned is like, I think I think we've grown up in this space where we also trust pharmaceutical way too much. Like we think that that's everything. Like if I have a problem, I take a pill and I get better. And we don't realize like, no, actually those were designed like if you absolutely need them and they're supposed to be short term. So you use them while you work on your other stuff so you can eventually get off of them. Right.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see how many people just rely on it. And to your point, right, there are tons of side effects. Like there's so many things it does that isn't good for you, but I don't think people, and maybe it's just society right now is we want things right away that people don't want to take the time to like, hey, like literally just go to the gym or exercise like just 5 days a week. Like it doesn't have to be strenuous, just do it. And I don't know, it's just so interesting to me. It's just one of those topics that like, I don't know, it's a bummer. And I get it too. I get it. Like when you get in that mental state, I've been in it too, where like you don't feel good. The last thing you want to do is exercise. But knowing that it could help, I mean, that's very interesting.
That's what's so crazy is like, when you first start doing it, they'll tell you like, if you can only do 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. Like stop at 5 minutes, take a 10-minute break, go back for another 5 minutes, take another 10-minute break. just the point is like over the course of the day, try and get this many, this much exercise. But I mean, I agree with you. I think, and part of it, I kind of think is just like the mentality that everyone has where it's like, well, I want a quick fix. Like,
Yep.
I don't want to work towards it. I want a quick fix. And it's sort of, I mean, honestly, I sometimes, people in my support group that I'm friends with, we talk about that even like with social media, like you're looking at this person smiling, but like what was happening 5 minutes before? Cause like there's like this very misconception that happens because you're looking at it this way. And I think sometimes that happens, at least like in the support group that I'm a part of for POTS, where it's like, oh, well, look at what this person's doing. They're doing fantastic. Like, tell me, what treatment did you do? And it's like, but that you have to be willing to follow what's being offered to you as well, And I think it's more like, well, I just want to get better. And I understand the want for that, but it's just unfortunately not how it works.
No, not at all. And it's funny because that's the purpose of this podcast, right? So we get to see like what people are actually going through rather than like that whole social media thing where everybody seems like they're all good. And then you feel really lonely because you're like, well, I'm the only one struggling and this sucks.
Well, and honestly, that was a problem I had with my feeding tube is I was so depressed and I had weddings for friends I was supposed to go to and I couldn't get out of bed and I'm watching all these photos and like, Mom, like, look at where this person is right now. Like, and I'm laying in bed, like I can't eat anything. And I was upset. And she was like, yeah, but you don't know what's going on. Like, this is just like literally a snapshot in time. And I mean, honestly, even like back to me graduating with my feeding tube, I posted pictures online of me happy and smiling, but 10 minutes before I was in the bathroom crying, like it is what it is. And it's part of life. And unfortunately, I actually do try and use my social media pages to kind of advocate when like awareness months are happening for health conditions that I deal with. But unfortunately, most people, they post the happy times. They want people to see that they're happy. They don't post, hey, I passed out in the grocery store today and I watched 10 people walk over me before someone offered to help me back up. You know what I mean? It's just not something that happens. So yeah. So I think it's pretty cool that you're doing this.
Oh, well, thank you. So, I have two things real quick. So, one, you explained the stuff that you went through and the procedures and the conditions. You explained it really well. Have you thought about like doing like a book, a blog, or something like that around this? Because literally, like I've heard people talk about POTS before, but I think this is the first time that someone's described it in a simple way that makes a whole lot of sense. So I don't know if you've thought of that or not.
So I actually started one.
Good.
Like I said, my first degree is marketing, public relations, and advertising. And when I went through my surgery, ironically, we had to write blog posts. We had to write 4 blog posts. They could be real or fake or whatever. So naturally, like I worked on my assignment and it was all fake posts just because I was trying to get the assignment done. And I absolutely love this professor. But she was like, maybe you write about your health stuff. Like maybe we switch it. Maybe because it was due, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days before or after my surgery was going to happen. And she was like, maybe this would help you. Because I was having trouble coming up with like, like when you write a blog, it's usually like all the posts come up with like one topic. Like it's different subjects, but it's like a general like thread that goes through all of them. Yeah. And I was just like, couldn't do it. And I wasn't super interested in doing it in the first place, but with my health stuff. So, ironically, I started a blog post and I did it first because I thought this will update everyone. Cause I had people at school that were worried about me and my family. And, it just seemed like it was easier that way. Like just to kind of, like give everyone this link and then share it that way. And carrying bridge was kind of a thing then, but like not really for the purposes of what I was going through, So, so I started a blog and I did it for school and I got a good grade. And then for some reason I just kept writing. And I actually, the first year, I think I had like 15 or 20 posts. And then, sometimes life gets in the way and you kind of forget. And I think I actually stopped it in 2020, with just like a few posts, but, that was like right when I was coming off my feeding tube and like things were happening. But yeah, so I do have one and it's still on the internet, but it has not been updated in many years. But yeah, so I talk about POTS then. I mainly talk about median arcuate ligament syndrome then, and at some point, like my later posts are more about chronic health in general.
Yes.
Like part of the problem with a lot of chronic health issues is like brain fog, and you think you've done something and you didn't. Or like one time I flooded the bathroom at my mom's house because I turned the sink on, then turned the shower on and forgot the sink was on, and took a real nice long shower and flooded the whole bathroom, the whole, whatever. And it's because I was having a flare, and I just like cognitively was not where I should have been to be doing that stuff. So yeah, so I do have a post, or have a blog, like a blog link, but it has not been updated in quite a while.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you start it again, because I think what you're sharing, I think, is very, very helpful to people, especially if that's something that's becoming more and more common with COVID and things. I think more people need to hear it, especially like I think, and what I like about how you shared it too is you shared it in a way where, like I said, it's easy to digest, it's simple, but you shared it in a way that I think is very helpful to people, right? Like thinking about like, yes, work out, like be consistent with your diet, like I think this sounds silly. You have a good head on your shoulders, right? Like I think you have a really good viewpoint on this that could really be helpful. So that's why I wanted to share that, just FYI. And then two, like you seem very optimistic. So what do you think? Because I mean, to quote your doctor, you got dealt a crazy hand, right? So how do you feel like? Do you see a silver lining to all this? Like, do you see a way of how what you went through really benefited you in some way?
If you ask me in the moment, I would tell you no. Every time I get a new diagnosis, or every time I'm having a new pain that needs to be dealt with, the answer is always this sucks, and I have a hard time finding the positive. My mom is a nurse, and when I first started having all these health issues, she used to only let me watch funny things, because funny things, release all the chemicals in your brain that you need to feel better.
Yep.
So, we've done Golden Girls and, all the old school shows. Like my mom and I sat there and binged them all. And at some point, her and we kind of had a conversation, because like I said, that first surgery, I cried every single day I had to change. And the thing is like changing is something you do multiple times a day, like changing clothes. Like, so it's not something where it's like, oh, like once a week I was experiencing this sadness. It was every day I was struggling, and the pain that was associated with it, certain clothes I used to wear I couldn't wear, and just different things. My mom and I kind of talked, and we kind of just said, like we need to put like a time limit. Like, not that you can't be upset, but you need to put a time limit on being able to say like, hey, this sucks. And then at some point, whatever that limit is that you want to have, at some point turn and be like, okay, this sucks, but what am I going to do about it? Like, you get a mourning period, and then you need to figure it out. You need to figure out what's going on. So, we got to that. The first couple of years, I kind of just kept it at this sucks for a long time. But after a while, I gave myself about 24 hours. I get one day to be completely upset and fall apart and mourn the life that I would have had the new diagnosis not come. And then I move on. I do think it's helped me. I actually, I started advocating for chronic illness patients in the area. I've gone to local hospital and spoken to the nurses and staff that are there, and like some of the administration staff, because when I go to hospitals sometimes, which maybe it would change now, but I remember like 5 years ago, I went to a hospital, and maybe 6 years ago, the doctor, I came in with POTS flare and a severe migraine brought in from it. And because he saw the word POTS next to my name, like on the board, he kept coming in and like flinging the door open and turning all the lights on and telling me how it's a throwaway diagnosis and he doesn't believe in it. And he thinks it's just, a bunch of crap, basically. And it was this whole thing. And it was the most devastating thing to be already at your worst, and then have a doctor that's not even your doctor come in and tell you like, hey, like, I think your diagnosis is crap. So it was hard. So I started advocating, and actually some of my really good friends are people that I met through my chronic illness support groups. When I had my first surgery, there was another girl. I had it when I was 21, and this girl was 15. and we became really good friends. We talk all the time and discuss our illnesses. And I talked to her on the phone while she was getting procedures done, on speakerphone, so that she would stay calm. And her parents struggled with trying to cope with it. And it kind of picked up from there. I have friends all over the country that I kind of, because I have been diagnosed for so long, I've been able to sort of share insight, even like meeting with your sister and your mom when they came down to St. Louis. Like, it's something that I don't think people realize, that it's helpful when you have someone that can say, like, I passed out, like, for instance, for me, like, I've passed out at the pharmacy, and I've literally, as I'm going down, have seen the pharmacist jump the counter trying to catch me before I hit my head on the floor. And one of my friends, like, she has a similar story, and it's nice to be able to be like, hey, I passed out today and it sucked, and have that person say, you know what, that happened to me 2 days ago, and I totally know what you mean. And that they genuinely know what you mean, and they genuinely know the mental and emotional, things that are happening with you when that situation happens. Because for a while, actually, my doctor that treats me now, he told me, he was like, you can't be mad at yourself every time you pass out, because you're training your brain that every time you have this medical situation to be angry. And with the way I was passing out then, I would have just been angry all the time. So, I mean, I do think that God gave me this for a reason. Do I wish he would have not given it to anyone or given it to someone else? Yes. But I do think that it genuinely, it's helped me. I've helped others dealing with with my health issues and just other health issues in general. Like I said, it's very nice to know you're not alone when you're dealing with stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. It's so healthy too, because I think too we try to avoid how we feel sometimes. I think to have that time where you can grieve and say, like, hey, this does suck, I think is really important. But I like the fact that you put a time limit on it. I think that's really important to kind of, and I think to navigate it, because at the end of the day, you still got to try to enjoy life, I guess, as much as you can, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I get that. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, let's see. So you mentioned funny. So what are you doing for fun right now?
I read a lot.
Okay, what kind? Fiction, nonfiction, learning? What is it?
Honestly, anything I can get my hands on. When it comes to health issues, I read all the time, and because there's always something new happening. And I actually have had people joke that my collection of medical books that I have is bigger than most doctors. I have bookshelves and bookshelves that are just medical books about all my conditions, about things going on, different diet plans that could or could not work, different things. So I read all the time, but at some point I started seeing a counselor to kind of help me process everything I was going through. And my counselor was like, it's got to be depressing to just read all those medical books. And it's like, it doesn't make me feel super great, but like, I feel like in the end, I'm getting this knowledge I need, to potentially help myself better myself for the, any treatment that may happen or whatever. And he was like, how about you only read medical books for 30 minutes a day? And then if you're going to keep reading, read something else. Like, don't focus your entire life on this. But so now I just read anything I can get my hands on. I still try and stick with like more funny things, just like I do with TV shows and stuff, because like I said, chronic illness is an everyday thing. It's not, you have the flu for a week and then you're better. So we do a lot of like shows that'll bring laughter to the house. And I keep that same, for the most part, that same kind of concept with reading. Like I've been reading a murder mystery series, but it's like a comedy murder mystery series. And actually there have been a few times where I've been like sitting in the doctor's office and I will start literally laughing out loud, and I'm like, oh, this is not a private place for everyone to start looking at me while I'm staring down at my book. But yeah, so I read a lot. When I can, I like to travel, and like I said, I have 2 bonus kids that keep us extremely active with their sports, and I like spending time with family and friends. So we keep it pretty simple for me. But honestly, sometimes with health stuff, like you can only do so much and you get exhausted. So our big activity we like to do is we travel or explore things that we can, see new places, in the St. Louis area if we can't, take a big trip every weekend like you would like to do. So, but yeah, so that's pretty much what we do for fun.
It's cool. It's when I get in the same boat sometimes. Like, I like to research a lot and just learn lots of just random stuff. Like, I don't pick a lane. Like, it could be psychology, neuroscience, could be, I don't know, I've human mating. I've looked at stuff like the topics are endless. I just get super curious. Like, I'm a curious person, so it's like I want to learn a little bit of everything. But it's funny because like I've noticed I have to have times because for a while there, I know that I started doing it as a coping strategy initially, right? When I went through my divorce, I realized I was like, I got to learn all this stuff, and I started using it as a coping tool. But then now I do it for fun. But I also realized too that there's a lot of times where it's like I need to not learn anything for a while, and I need to do something like entertaining, and that is hard for me. Like I don't know what it is, but it is very hard for me to like entertain without me being like, I should be doing something else right now. I should be doing something
Exactly.
constructive, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, so I make it a point now. It's like, okay, I'm not going to research or listen to any podcast right now that are going to be full of all this wisdom and information. I am going to watch a movie, and that's super hard for me to do. But yeah, I think that it's a balancing game, right? Like, I think it's really important to have both for sure. So also, so you mentioned dance. I was just curious. So the next question was, what's a skill or talent that you could share with everybody? Is that still dance, or is there some other skill or talent that you got right now?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. Right now, I feel like my skill is like managing to just like never sit down because I'm always doing something. It's pretty impressive to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I still like to dance when I can, and I think I don't know. Not a whole lot has changed since that. I mean, if I could dance every day, I'd still do it, you know? But yeah, I guess that's still a talent. I don't think I have any other talents that are impressive.
Besides reading these medical
Besides
books.
reading like tons of books all the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I have any other talents going on.
Yeah. So from all those medical books, like, what's something that you've learned from one of the, like, if you had one aha moment from a book that you read, like, what is it that like the audience would be like you'd like to share the audience to just really take back and be like, that's cool. I didn't know that.
So many things I feel like I should be saying. One of the things I know, like that actually helps me with staying off my feeding tube, like reminds me of this stuff, is I read a case study about someone who discovered that you, with the other conditions I have, your stomach can have moments of hypermobility where it's over functioning, or moments where it's paralyzed, where it's not functioning like it should. And I was on my feeding tube when that happened. And so my doctor and I read about it, sent it to my doctor. We discussed it. And he was like, let's try another test. Like, let's just see. You've been saying you're hungry. Like, let's just see what happens. So I did another test, and my stomach was over functioning at that point. It was no longer paralyzed, and that's when I got to get my feeding tube pulled out. So it was pretty cool. I mean, I had to do like a trial and error before they like pulled the tube out, and then I had no nutrition. But yeah, it was cool that like I was able, like I said, I was able to read about the stuff and then advocate for myself, and I actually had a doctor willing to listen. And when I'm going through flares now, I'll be like, oh, my stomach is not, like, there's no way. I haven't eaten in a couple of days. Like, my stomach's not functioning like it should. It's like, okay, let's just remember it's going to reverse. Like, it's going to go the opposite way. So it's nice to do that. And my husband's developed health issues since. I've met him, and all my reading has helped us with that, with some aha moments for doctors. So it's been pretty cool to be able to say that you're actively participating in what's happening to you.
I like that. It's funny. It's funny how, because you mentioned overfunctioning and underfunctioning. I was listening to something that I thought was really fascinating. They talked about how our bodies like to they like to go back to homeostasis a lot, right? So they talked about dopamine specifically, and what was really fascinating about it is they talked about for every heightened dopamine experience that you have, you're going to have an opposite negative, right? So like if you have something really like that gives you a lot of dopamine, like some type of exciting thing, typically that means a lot of times like the day after or afterwards, you're going to feel low. And there's really no explanation for it besides the fact that you just had a high. So now you have a low because your body's trying to get back to homeostasis. And it's interesting because a lot of times we don't like those negative feelings, right? So like when we get in those lows, we're like, oh, this is terrible, right? but it's funny to think that it's natural. So like that's what they said, the harm in like addictions and stuff, because when people are addicted, right, we're trying to get that dopamine thing all the time, right? Because we're like, oh, we don't want to feel low, we need that dopamine hit. But they said the problem is if we keep trying to feed that dopamine, eventually we could actually lower our homeostasis. So homeostasis point. So that then we actually, when we get to the low point, it's actually way lower than it would have been otherwise, which is
and they have trouble coping.
Which, yes, exactly.
Wow.
So what they said is you can do, like, they say, like, dopamine detoxes or things like that, like where you can, I guess you could take like 30 days and like get rid of certain things in your life that cause those dopamine things. And they said you can reset it. It's possible to reset, but it's a really interesting concept that I remember listening to and being like, whoa, aha moment. Like that's fascinating.
No, that's really interesting. I've never heard that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. One of those random facts that I learned looking up research. Okay, so now let's see. Now is the time for you to kind of share with the audience, like anything you want, as far as like, is there something you're trying to promote? Where can people find you? Just like this is like your moment to kind of share any of that info, if you have anything that you want to share.
I don't have any info. No, I don't do any like links or anything. I mean, like I said, I have that blog post from years ago, but that's about it.
Well, what's that called?
I feel like I keep.
What's that called? Just so I can write it down. I wouldn't mind putting that in the description so people can at least like go there and check out some of the writings you did.
The link is brittanycurran.blogspot.com. And I think the whole blog is called Keeping Up with Brittany.
That's a catchy name. I like that.
I think that was like a last minute, I don't know what to call this, so here we go.
Well, it's funny because certain people's names like work well for things like that. So like it flows really nicely, but I could see someone with a really interesting name like that not actually working very well. So, okay. I like that. Okay, cool. So nothing else that you want to share in that regard?
Yeah, I don't have any like links or anything like that. No, I mean, nothing.
Okay. And then
kind of boring.
So up to this point, so this is probably my favorite question. Well, second favorite. I think the struggle is always my favorite question because I'm so curious about what people have gone through. But this one is like, so if you were to have a book created about your life so far, from when you were born to now, that would sum up your life, what would the name of that story be called?
And I watched Chris struggle with this on the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this is my life ? Is probably like an ideal thing. I don't know. I really think that's it, because I think I have had multiple moments throughout being an adult, at least, where I've been like, really, is this happening? Is this what's going on right now in my life? This is what we're choosing to have happen at this moment. So yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know. I mean, really, that's the only thing that keeps coming to mind is like, this is my life. Like,
this is my life ? Okay. Okay. Well, that's going to be the thumbnail. So that's going to be the title. I like that. Okay.
I just keep thinking like, like, I don't know. I just think there's moments when like all these health issues would happen, or like even like meeting Brett. Like, it was like, really? Like, this is where we're at. Like, this is how it's going to go. But okay.
I like it. Okay. And then the last thing I like to do is I like to have the previous guest basically create a question for the guest we have now. So you're going to have another question that the previous person just made, and then you get to create a question for the next guest. So the question for you is, what have you done recently to change someone's life?
That would have been a question I was given ahead of time to like process.
It's a deep question. I just talked to him yesterday, so I guess I could have sent it to you, but it's fun to see people come up with on the spot. Fine. This is good.
It's just like a very deep question.
It is, yeah.
I think this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but it is what it is. When I met my husband, I had a feeding tube, and I was not eating anything by mouth, or I had just started, if I remember correctly. And we dated for a long time with my feeding tube for several months. And at the time, I didn't think that I would be able to have a normal life. I had kind of, even before my feeding tube, I'd kind of resigned myself to like, hey, you have all these health issues that even you don't want to deal with. Like, why would you ask another person to like get involved in the messiness that is chronic illness? So I'd kind of resigned myself to not having the family I wanted, not getting married. I was just going to live my life as best I can and travel all the time and see Anna Marie and Felipe all the time. Like, just, they live in New York, just go take advantage. I met Brett, and like, he kind of changed my perspective. He was okay with my feeding tube. On our third date, I passed out from POTS, woke up to him laying on the floor, playing his ukulele, waiting for me to wake up right next to him. He kind of changed my perspective. He changed my thought process, and he gave me hope, is really what he did. He gave me hope, and I knew something was different about him when I met him, but even if it didn't work out, he'd at least given me that glimpse of, there is someone probably out there, that I don't have to be alone if I don't want to. So Brett and I got married, and even in our vows, he joked about meeting me on feedingtube.com and being a cheap date because he didn't have to take me to eat out for, a while. It was just 100% Brett. And 3 weeks after we got married, Brett hit his head and had a traumatic brain injury. And he didn't remember, some of our best nights he doesn't remember from the vacation that we'd been on when he hit his head. And he progressively has gotten worse since it, diagnosed with, rare condition after rare condition. And right now, I mean, that's honestly something I think I'm helping him through. When it first happened, I honestly, going back to my title here, was like, why is this happening to me? Like, I finally was given like a normal aspect of life. I have not had a normal aspect of life. I haven't been able to hold a full-time job, and I haven't been able to date and, do these things that people my age are doing. And I finally was given that aspect. When Brett got sick, like, I think the reason I was given my health issues is because he knew Brett was going to get sick. God knew it was coming. And I mean, we have support from close friends and my family and everything, but it's me and Brett together, and we're sticking it out. And I'd like to think that all the research that I have gotten used to doing for myself, and all the advocating and the things that I've done, I'd like to think that I'm helping Brett through what he's going through, more than what you would expect someone to do, even being married to them. Sleeping in the hospital rooms nonstop. At one point, I actually slept in the hospital bed next to him for a month. So I'd like to think that I'm making things a little bit better for him.
It's a really special connection y'all have. I think that's a really good way to look at it. They say too, like, a lot of relationships, the way they get stronger are being able to go through things like that together, like struggles and things like those are the strongest relationships. So the fact that, I mean, looking at the future, like you said, is like, it's almost like it was destined to a certain extent. It's like he helped you during your tough times because you were going to help him during his. And I don't know. I just think that's actually really special.
Well, honestly, when I first met Brett and we were doing the feeding tube and stuff, when I went in for that special test to see if I'd maybe get to come off my feeding tube, I remember being like, Brett's okay with this. Like, I really like this guy, and he's okay with this. And I'm okay if this test comes back bad. Like, for 9 months, I'd been praying that this test would say, like, hey, it's all wrong, take the tube out immediately. But in that moment, I was like, you know what? Like, he's okay with it. I'm okay with it. Like, I can deal. I can figure it out. I think we've gotten to that point. I mean, when he first hit his head, and we were really struggling with it, it was hard. 3 weeks into marriage, like, it's not what you expect, and hitting your head on your honeymoon. So my aunt, I remember she told my mom, like, that she believed it was something really special we must have, that, the devil was like putting us in this place of testing us to see if we were going to survive this, this horrible time, because it was hard. Brett couldn't remember things that were happening, and he was getting overly frustrated over very, simple things that most people wouldn't, but it's an effect of traumatic brain injury. And so we went through it. And then at some point, when you got this, rare condition, it was like, no one believed us. And it was like, no matter how many times I was saying, like, hey, like, this is happening. I'm telling you, this is happening. I am spending I was at that point, I wasn't working because I was his full-time caregiver. And it was like, I am literally the only times he is not with me is for him to use the restroom. It's like, so like I'm watching what's happening. Like what you're saying is happening. It's not happening. Like this is something that is truly happening within his body. We're not making it up. We're not, sugarcoating something else that's going on, trying to like get around the system. Like this is where we're at. And no one believed us. But my mom was like, I think your health experiences are helping him with his, and we're getting there. It's a struggle, and it's not something you expect, right away after marriage. You expect to have, several years before you experience, health stuff. And Brett, like the second time he was in the hospital last year, he which I know the nurses were shocked that he said it, but he looked at me and was like, you're supposed to be on the hospital bed, not me. Well, it's because I have health issues. Those nurses don't know it, and I swear they were like, what is wrong with this couple? Like that this comment is being made. But it's like, I understood where he was coming from. Like, we got married, he signed on for my health issues. He didn't have any for me to be like, yeah, I'm okay with it, But so I think there was a reason that I was given mine, and that I'm able to help him now more than most people would. I mean, most people our age don't have health issues like this, to be able to know how to navigate the system and deal with insurance, and know that you need to do the research to find the doctor that works for you. So, yeah.
So we need to get Brett on here sometime, by the way, if he's cool with it one day, just FYI. So
he can just make joke after joke after joke.
Yes, yeah, we have to. So I don't know when. So we can talk later about it, but we should get him on here. I think he'd be a fun guest. And then two. So now that was a great answer. Now, what question do you want to leave for the next guest? Because I'm actually going to see them tomorrow, so they're going to get your question.
So you're going to think my question, especially after that question, is very silly, but I have a reason for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, what's your favorite color? And the reason is because when you choose your colors, it can reveal a lot of aspects about someone's personality and their behavioral traits, and how they can handle situations.
Okay.
That's my reason.
Can we test this right now? Can I give you my favorite color and you tell me about myself?
I don't know every color, but I know some colors.
Okay, let's do this. Are you game?
Okay. I'm a little nervous, but sure.
My favorite color is black.
Oh my gosh, that's not a color I know. All right, tell me.
That's all I got.
Okay, we're going to pretend like you said your favorite color is blue, okay?
Okay, because now it's going to totally relate to me now. Okay.
So, no, but they say, okay, so, for instance, people that have, personalities that are people that have their favorite color be, blue and green, and even sometimes a darker blue, almost leading to purple. They say it it's a representation of confidence, and they're a professional aspect, and they're very open and honest and truthful, and they have great communication skills. Does that sound like you? No, just kidding.
Blue's not my favorite color. I mean, some of it I relate to, but blue's not my color, so.
No, black. I'm gonna have to look it up now when we get done, and then I'll send it to you.
Okay, that's good.
But for me, my favorite colors have always been red and yellow. Well, red and yellow are signs of creativity and innovation. So it's kind of cool. I mean, maybe not everyone's color fits, because another aspect of red and yellow favorite colors is extrovert, and I'm really not an extrovert, but for the most part, it's cool to see that aspect and see how it relates to what their how their personality is portrayed as well.
Gotcha.
So I think it's interesting. It's not as deep and philosophical as some of the other questions I've seen you have, but it's all.
This is good. Okay, cool. Well, one, we got to look that up, and then two, you can pick more than one color.
I mean, I have more than one favorite color.
This is the thing. So black is my favorite color, but black with the combination of any other color is awesome. I think the contrast of black versus any color, even hot pink, still looks cool. I don't know. So I don't know if that means anything, but
I don't know. I'll have to look. I have this I found this website. So when I went through my dietetics degree, they have you do counseling sessions because you're working with patients, so you have to be able to speak to the patients appropriately. And they discussed a section on like colors and like how people present themselves and different things. And I kind of got really interested in it because I think it's very interesting to see, like, I mean, it depends on where you're looking. Other, some websites have different stories for different colors, but, like red is a sign of like success and like a strong desire to accomplish goals and things like that. And like to a degree that fits me, so it's kind of cool to see that like subconsciously you're picking something that actually fits with your, your personality and your overall behavior.
Cool. Hey, I question for you. Can we do an episode on here of just colors? Would you be down?
I need to do a lot of research.
Well, no, I mean,
give me some. I'm gonna do some research.
I mean, we're not going to do it tomorrow, but like, let's set some time, and like maybe in a month or two or something, maybe we can do like just a one-off episode. Because I've been talking to people, and it's funny. Like as I talk to people, everybody has like their little niche, like the thing they're into. That would make a great episode. So like, I've thought about doing like a siblings episode because me, my sister, my brother have really fun stories. So we thought about that. A guy I talked to is big on theology. So I'm like, let's do a theology episode. So like, I think that could be fun. It's just to do like a color personality episode thing.
I like it.
Okay.
I like it.
Sweet. Okay, I'm down.
All right.
Okay. Sweet.
I just need to be able to do all my research, so just give me a time.
Yeah. We'll talk offline. We'll be good. So anything else that you want to share? So anything at all?
I think so.
No.
I don't think so. I think it's cool you're doing this. I think I was really nervous about what you're going to ask me about, like something in memory about you, because all I have is like, I mean, we went to school together, but like my big memories are like 3rd through 5th grade.
Why? Why are your big memories 3rd through 5th grade?
You 3rd through 5th grade. So that's when we liked each other.
I remember.
So
I haven't forgotten.
I still have like the rock thing that you gave me because you used to like collect rocks or something.
Yeah, I did.
Didn't you?
I used to collect rocks, crystals. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like a crystal heart rock thing that has like a pink flower on it.
Oh, that's.
No, I'm pretty sure I have it upstairs.
Really?
I'm gonna have to take a picture. I'll send
You'll
it
have
to you.
because I don't even remember what it looks like. So.
Yeah, and then my mom, I remember you gave it to me, it was in 4th grade, and then I remember my mom drilled a hole in it and put it on a necklace, and it's like this huge rock, and I was like, I'm sure I wore it, but now it's like, really? Did we really put that on?
Yeah, 3rd through 5th grade was so fun. I remember, because like we were dating, but that meant just like that meant we were like still sitting at opposite ends of like lunch tables.
We barely talk to each
and we
other.
wouldn't talk to each other, but we just kind of look at each other from time to time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then like, and it's so funny because like, just you're a little kid, everything is so much more drawn out. And then like everything ends in 5th grade, and then you messaged me like 2 years ago, and you were like, I want to apologize, and I was like, that was 20 years ago. Like, okay, thanks, I really appreciate it. But I mean, I think it shows you're a good guy. But it was just so funny because I was like, oh, wait a minute, let me get back to 5th grade here. What happened in 5th grade?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 5th grade, that was tough. I felt so bad, and like it's funny because like a couple of years ago I hit a low time. It's funny when you hit low moments, you start to think about all the things that you did that wasn't good. Like I apologized to a few people about different things during that time because I felt like guilty, So yeah.
For not speaking to me anymore when we weren't speaking to begin with.
Yeah, well, I mean, how it happened wasn't very ideal. I felt so bad. I felt so bad forever.
This is so funny. I do like remember, like how that happened, but like it's just so funny because back then I remember it was like, oh, the end of the world. When you and I had maybe said hi to each other once since it all started, since like our like started in 3rd grade, you know? But it was like the end of the world. And it's funny because like even in high school, I remember there would be times when like you and Tony and like, I don't know, some people would be doing something and someone would come up to me and be like, do you remember when you and Ricky liked each other in 4th grade? I'm like, yeah. Like, yeah, I do. Thanks.
That's hilarious.
Thanks for the memory.
Yeah, it's funny that people would still talk about that, but I guess maybe it's a big deal. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, shoot, 3 years. That's a long relationship.
That
2
was.
years.
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember you invited me over to your birthday once. So that was probably the most
I
we
think
ever
were you
talked at
the only
one
guy?
time. I remember you invited someone else named Ricky over, so I would feel, but I wouldn't feel alone. And it felt so weird saying Ricky to someone else that's not me. That was the first time I ever met another Ricky. That was funny.
Oh, I remember that now. Wow. I don't know where that guy is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was, yeah. So yeah, but when it was like something about me and how you know me, I was like, oh geez. Like,
See, I thought you were going to say that at the beginning. That's the funniest part. And you left it out. And I was like, well, and I'm not going to go there. We'll keep talking. So
no, I didn't know how to be like, oh, you remember when we liked each other and never spoke to each other and randomly gave gifts
yeah,
25 years ago?
yeah, we were just
Shoot, that was
both
more than
shy,
25 years
kind
ago.
of.
No, really shy.
Yeah,
Really shy. You're 100% correct on that.
yeah, it makes sense.
Oh
Memory
man.
lane.
I need to find that necklace. I'm gonna show it to you.
Okay, you got to. Okay, well, people are going to
I'm
love
so
the end of the podcast because that's the juicy gossip from way back in the day.
from back from school days.
Back in the day, love it. Okay, cool. Well, hey, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. And like I said, we'll set up another episode here here soon because I think it was a great conversation. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, I will talk to you later.
Okay.